Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming along today to this. It's an introduction to the Realisation Festival. And the Realisation Festival is running at St Giles House in Wimborne, St Giles on the 27th to the 30th of June, 2024. That's this very year. And we're really excited to be, I think it's our 5th year officially. Our first year we were online, and then we had a very tiny gathering to meet. I think we had 30 people we were allowed on our next one, and we've slowly grown it to this year being the maximum number we will have, which is 150 people, and we've kept it at that small amount because we're really keen that this is a festival where we make connections. And it is thought that that is the number, which means that we can actually connect with each other and leave feeling like we have actually met everybody at the festival. And the festival is really something about finding time and space for the soul. I really like that as a byline for a festival because it actually sort of really makes me feel very sort of peaceful about a festival. My name's Pippa, I should say. My name's Pippa Evans, and I'm one of the co-creators of the festival. And I have a background in improvisation and comedy, but also I started Sunday Assembly, which was a gathering of people, church for people who don't believe in God. So I've always been a bit interested in souls and how actually perhaps the soul is a really important part of how we be alive. And so we wanted to create something which was a space for people to get away and reflect and find a place to think about. What is it to live a soulful life? What is it to be alive? What is it to realize what it is we need to live a meaningful life? So I'm here as one of the co-creators, and I've got also with me Mark Vernon, and he's going to be speaking in a minute. And I've also got Nick Ashley Cooper, whose house is that we will be meeting in June. And I'm going to hand over to Nick now, and he's just going to talk a bit more about why we're doing this Realisation Festival. So Nick, I'll hand over to you now.
Thanks, Pippa. Yeah, just to echo welcome, and great so many of you could join us this evening to find out a little bit more about this festival. It has become a really special event for all of us that are involved in it. And as Pippa says, it's sort of we've been on a bit of a journey, having had the idea and then gone straight into lockdown. It gave us a few curveballs right at the start, but it also enabled us to grow the event quite slowly. So we started small, and then it's evolved kind of at a nice pace. And I think it's really important to stress at the beginning that it is a really quite an intimate event, and it's designed to be intimate so that we all have a chance to get to know each other over the course of the 4 days and really soak in the speakers and the place and the environment. And that's important because our lives are so busy and full, and we're getting bombarded by information all the time, and it felt really important to have that opportunity to actually have time to meet and discuss ideas and thoughts with people. And I think that's probably one of the first learnings of this event, that one of the most special aspects about it is having really deep, meaningful connections with other people. So it started. Why did it start? So my story has been a bit about trying to rescue this place called St Giles House. So I was sort of thrown into looking after St Giles in 2005, following a sort of double family tragedy, losing both my father and brother. It was really my brother's role to take on this place. And sadly he passed away. So I was sort of, pulled off the subs bench, and sort of thrown into this responsibility, and it's been a big journey for me to figure out what to do with the house. It was really just a falling down building and hadn't been lived in for about 50 years, so it was in a really poor state. And anyway, sort of, don't want to linger too long on that, but I met my wife, and we had children. We had this idea to bring life back into the home, and really been focusing on that for the last 13 years. And part of making it work is bringing people to it and sharing the house with others and making it a viable business. So we do lots of different events here, and a lot of weddings and a lot of celebrations and some festivals, bigger festivals in the park. But I really wanted to do something that lent into, firstly, the history of the place. There's an incredible history here of philosophers and social reformers and deep thinkers in the family, and people that really cared about society and what was going on, and trying to think through solutions and do what they can to help. So there was something in the DNA of St Giles that I felt I wanted to bring back now that the house was sort of alive. And I wanted to have a deeper purpose to what we had done, bringing the place back. It didn't feel that it was enough just to have this place and do weddings and just to have it to make money, that it needed to have a deeper social purpose. So the sort of idea of this festival really came from that desire from my side. And then I was very lucky to meet Pippa and Mark, and we have two fellow co-creators, Jonathan Rowson and Ed Haddon, and together we really all bring something completely unique and different to this event, but it's all part really important sort of ingredients to what makes it quite special. And at its heart is this idea that the world is a challenging place, and even pre-lockdown we could sense that there were lots of things people were grappling with trying to make sense of what was going on in the world, and what did it mean for each of us in our lives, and could we create something where we came together to discuss that and to see what, not necessarily come up with an answer to it, but be able to chew the fat on some of that and see what solutions and ideas we could come up with for ourselves. In that sense, it's really important for us that this isn't a festival just about sitting and listening to great speakers, although there are amazing great speakers, and I don't want to steal too much of the thunder of my colleague Mark in this, but that it's also about an embodied experience, that you actually get to do a lot of things, and you're not just sitting on a chair listening to people, but you're actually participating and you're immersing yourself in St Giles. And we make sure, Pippa mentioned she's an improviser, that there are things that you're doing to try and get yourself out of your normal comfort zone, but in a very safe and trusted environment, because ultimately it's based on the premise that if we're really going to make real change, that we've got to feel that. Can't just be thinking through some of these problems, that actually it's got to move us in a much deeper way. So this has been a really special part of my life now in St Giles, and a really important part, and it's evolved a lot, and I think each year we learn a huge amount about the festival, and we're really excited this year with the group of speakers we have, and I think that's probably a good segue to pass maybe back to Pippa and then to Mark.
It was a great segue, Nick. Thank you so much for your segue and for everything else that you said. Really excited for this year. And so I'll just immediately pass you over, in fact, to Mark Vernon, who's sort of head of programming for the Realisation Festival. And he's done an incredible job with what he's put together. And he's just going to talk about what we're trying to do and what the programme looks like. So Mark, over to you.
Thank you very much. Lovely to see everybody and good to join in. The what this year is going to focus particularly on what is the nature of soul. Pippa said that we're a gathering for the soul, or a festival for the soul. And in previous years, we tried looking at that through particular issues. But as Nick was saying there, we're trying to learn from the birthing of the gathering. And so I'm going to present soul as the main focus this year. And the speakers that we've delighted are going to be coming along, I think, have different things to say about that, a different feel and approach even, that will complement the whole weekend and take us on this journey together as well as separately. As Nick was also saying, that sense of a collective undertaking is really important. Soul, what is soul? I mean, it's a bit like Louis Armstrong's comment that if you've got to ask, you ain't ever going to know. But I think it's that felt, animate quality of being alive, both as an individual and in a particular time and place. You know, soul isn't just something that a person has, but it's something that is a collective feeling as well. I only just heard last week that one of the roots of the word soul in English is a German word, Seele. And you might think Seele sounds a bit like an English word too, silly. And in fact, the two words are connected, soul and silly. And this, I think, is because soul is that which lightens us, that which gives us energy, that which expands our horizons, maybe sort of shakes our consciousness a bit, in order that we can see more, feel more, grow more, know more. And so I hope that through the speakers, but as Pippa will say shortly, also the music and the other things that the weekend involves, Nick also mentioned the beauty of the place, that combination will be a really rich and wonderful way of engaging this fundamental part of ourselves that can feel so difficult to get a handle on, maybe personally, but also because of the nature of the times in which we live, which has its own soul, but sometimes can feel, contracting, lost. Rowan Williams, one of our keynotes, has talked about how soul gives us a sense of story and direction. Ayisha Siddiqa, another one of our keynote speakers, she uses poetry in her activism to bring in soul. Another one of our speakers, Bettany Hughes, the historian, she tells the stories of the past full of their richness and energy to try and stir soulfulness inside us. So that's some of the people who are coming along. And just very practically, if you wanted to see much more of the program, then do have a look at the realisation.com website, because there's a tab there where almost every day we're just sort of filling out the program a bit more. But it's pretty much there now, I think, in terms of getting a good sense of what the weekend will involve. So this week, time we're focusing on soul. Maybe just to say, Nick mentioned the past of St Giles House, and one of the previous Earls of Shaftesbury was Anthony Ashley Cooper, who was the third Earl and a really important philosopher in the 18th century. And he was very concerned for these kind of things. He was taught by John Locke, the British empiricist, that took a lot of thought and indeed sense of life in a particular direction in this country. But the third Earl, Anthony Ashley Cooper, was very much involved in trying to keep alive, really, a sense of things that might be associated with soul. He wondered why wildernesses move us, for example. He wondered about the soul of the soil. So a very rich figure, almost like a godfather to the festival, alongside the social concerns of the place, particularly in the seventh Earl. Shaftesbury Avenue in London and so on remembers the seventh Earl. So in a number of ways, I hope we'll be connecting with the feel of the place and thinking about soul, both individually and in the sense of a shared time and place, a collective dynamic that we can perhaps foster and co-create with, collaborate with. And I hope very much that an extraordinarily rich sense of this fundamental part of ourselves will come alive through what we program, but probably as well, more dynamically in the encounters that people have. And so having space for that is a really important part of the weekend as well. So there's something about the what of the festival as a whole, but maybe particularly thinking about what we hope will be conjured and explored this year in particular. But there are very special ways that we have of doing that as well. So Pippa, tell us something about the how.
I shall indeed, Mark. And in fact, I was just sitting here thinking this Zoom is kind of the worst way we could possibly explain the Realisation Festival, because it is sitting looking at a screen sort of on our own. We're not able to be really in dialogue with each other. And so it feels, I feel like I wish I could climb through my computer camera somehow and interact with you all. Yeah, really, so much of the festival is about, it's not about getting away from the intellect, but rather going, what can we put with it? It's so easy, particularly this kind of a thinking festival, a festival about reflection, to get into listening to speakers and hearing someone tell us what to do, when really we're kind of trying to dynamically feel and be with what we are bringing ourselves and also with what others are bringing. So how can we be in that dialogue, and how can we be in dialogue where it's not just verbal? And so we thought the best way to do that would be to start with a ceilidh. So we'll be starting the whole festival by dancing together. And personally, I'm absolutely excited and thrilled about this, because I think there could be nothing better than to start a weekend where we have made it so that everybody could meet. We have made it so the numbers are manageable so that we can be in dialogue and in relation. How wonderful to have that dialogue begin in movement and in music and in celebration. We will have this wonderful ceilidh band, and they will bring us, starting with this music and the celebration. We do, as Mark already said, have these wonderful speakers. We also have workshops, which will be in different ways. So we've got artists coming to do artist practice. We've got somebody coming to talk about the trees that are in St Giles. We've got also got the realisation players, and that's really where I come in, and that I am one of them. And we will be using improvisation to just really explore how to become alive in the moment and bring ourselves to meet each other, and what it really is to collaborate with one another. How do I bring my ideas and place them with someone else's ideas, and really allow them to meet and see what emerges between the two. And that will be done through playful improvisation exercises. Also, two of the realisation players are top level musicians, so they'll also be singing. So we'll be learning how to instantly create song. We will also be just playing with each other, finding ways to play. And again, coming into our bodies, we've got a wonderful yoga practitioner who will be moving people through some movements if they wish. Again, this is a timetable which will both thrill you and disappoint you, because you can't go to everything. Okay. And one way we're getting around that is actually by having small groups, which is a really, really vital part of the weekend, we believe. So everybody will be placed into a small group with some people. I think it's 8 to 10 people we think it's going to be in the group. And the purpose of that is really just to have a sense of people to travel through the weekend with, who will perhaps share with you the things that they have experienced that you haven't been able to experience. But I think rather than me talk about it, Mark, shall I play the video, because we've got a wonderful practitioner who is helping us put the small groups together this time. Could you just introduce that while I find it?
Yes, so the way we've tried to incorporate small groups into the weekend is something that we've been learning from over the 3 or 4 years that we've been doing it in person. And I'm really delighted this year that we've got Lucy Taylor, who's coming to help us do that. And earlier I spoke to Lucy, and here is just 2 minutes of what we said. Now, I can't hear that, but
No.
Yeah, but it was working before. If not, I shall give a little summary. But
let's see if it works now.
Hi, I'm Lucy Taylor. I'm the founder of the Make Work Play project, and I'm a facilitator and coach and trainer. And I do a lot of work with groups, helping them do hard things in a fun way. And I'm going to be working on holding this space for the small groups at this year's Realisation.
So thanks very much indeed, Lucy, for joining us. And I'm really delighted that you can help us with this element of the gathering that is really important. I think it's one of the distinctive things. But tell us something about how you imagine the small groups can therefore be of use to people who are coming.
My sense is that the small groups are a space for integration. So I think, you know, when we're listening to a lot of stuff, it kind of is it's in our head. And I think what the small groups are great for is taking it kind of and landing it kind of in our bodies, and a space to kind of process what we've been hearing, to kick it around with other people, and really kind of deepen our understanding of the things that we've been hearing over the course of the day. I think it's also a really nice space to cross-pollinate. So you said, Mark, you know, we won't all be able to go to everything, so there'll be stuff we miss out on. So I think it's a really nice space for people to share what they've been to and learn from others who've been to stuff that you haven't, and also to develop relationships, you know, with people you might not necessarily come into contact with. I think they're a lovely place to connect in a slightly different way.
So thank you, that makes sense. So there's a certain formality about them in that they are on the programme, and we do invite people to participate in the small group, but that formality, I hope, is very much in the service of the spontaneity you just mentioned there, that it's a space where particular encounters can happen that might not otherwise. So look, thanks so much again for helping us with it, and I look forward to how it unfolds.
Yeah, me too.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And spookily, Mark, you are dressed exactly the same in front of the same backdrop. So who knows if Lucy's actually there. Brilliant. Okay, well, look, we've really spoken about the festival. I'm sure some of you might have some questions. I also know that Jonathan Rowson, another one of our co-creators, has sort of appeared. So if anyone's got any questions, why don't, at this point, would you just put in the chat that you've got questions? I'm just going to invite Jonathan if he wants to add anything. But if anyone's got any questions they want asked, now would be a great time to put them in the chat. Or if you prefer, you can just put your hand up so that we know if you would rather speak the question rather than type the question. Jonathan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Pippa, and greetings, everybody. I recognize some of you from various places, and good to see you all again. It is probably good at this point to receive questions, but let me just, I'll warble on, and your task is to stop me with a good question, okay? So, lots of ways of understanding the Realisation Festival, but one of them is in terms of what, you know, offline events give us that we don't get online. And that's, you know, some ways something we knew a lot about until the pandemic hit. That was just so-called normal life. And then the pandemic happened, and suddenly there was sort of Zoom fatigue, and then there was a kind of re-engagement with the world. But there was also a little bit of forgetting. A lot of people have reported, you know, their social schedule's a bit different post-pandemic, and the willingness to travel is a little bit different, and the sort of habit energy of meeting someone online has taken hold. And so the question becomes, you know, what is the value added of being together in person in a particular place and time? And there's a few things that come to mind there. One is, I think it's Keats who says, no, it's sorry, Rilke, the poet Rilke, who says, nothing ever becomes real until it is experienced. Nothing ever becomes real. The words are quite important until it's experienced. And I think this is quite a key part of the festival, because there are lots of ideas. You can watch a TED Talk online, you can, you know, go to YouTube or whatever, but something happens when you're in the room, and not just with the speaker, but then usually because you're thrown together with other people who are at some stage of their life's path, often in between things, we find a lot of people come to the festival to sort of take stock of their life and figure out their next move. Very often this leads to what one of the prior attendees called points of emotional contact. And I find this quite a vivid way of describing what the festival offers that you can't easily get elsewhere. These points of emotional contact often come from intimate conversations. They'll sometimes come from big ideas. They'll very often come from new kinds of practice that you haven't done before. So improvisation is a great example, but we also have Perspectiva Anti-Debate, which we'll be doing this year again. And then there are lots of little discoveries that you've probably heard about already in terms of people offering their own take or practice or performance of some kind that you can access informally. But really, you're going there for the other people. You're going there for the social enrichment primarily, surrounded by a lot of aesthetic delight because it's such a beautiful place. And I think that the only time I've never really been tempted to check my phone is when I'm at the Realisation Festival. And we may have heard already, we have a phone policy where we encourage you, we don't sort of, rugby tackle you and take your phone off you if we see it, but we are very keen that you keep your phone in your accommodation and don't bring it to the main area, or if you do, not to bring it out of your pocket. And just, it's quite important that we give ourselves a chance to actually settle back into real life, our bodies and our souls indeed. So the festival gives you this, it gives you, the value of offline experience, different kinds of practice and kind of inquiry, points of emotional contact. And then the small groups very often lead to friendships. I know it's a kind of old-fashioned word. Mark's actually written several books on friendship. But if I was to sell the festival, good chance you'll make lifelong friends there, just because you go through something together. And that bonds you together in a way that, mere shared interests cannot. You go through something together, and I'm quite, proud of the thing we've created. It's taken a few years, it's been a few bumps on the road, but there does seem to be an underlying kind of ethos now. And I think it's important to add that I see one of my roles, and everyone in the Realising team has a role, but I bring a little bit of the historical and political edge to the proceedings. I'm quite keen that it's not just the knees up in the country. We're not just kind of going there for recreation. There is a sense in which we're there to find our own responsibility too, to sort of reconnect with the world, renewed in spirit, hopefully, but with an eye to how we can contend with the challenges of our times, and not just how we can feel better about ourselves, or that it's not purely therapeutic. It's also meant to be galvanizing in some way. I noticed there are some questions though, so you've managed to stop me.
Mark's already replied to the first question, which is simply, is it fully subscribed? We're not fully subscribed, but actually maybe, Jonathan, do you want to talk to the bursaries a little bit, that opportunity? Sure.
So this is partly for those watching, but it's also for people to keep in mind. We are keen to have as wide a spectrum of people as possible at the festival. Now, the as possible is operative there, because to make it financially viable, there is a ticket price and people do have to buy the tickets, and then there's accommodation cost. But we want younger people especially, but not necessarily. Sometimes people who are not so young but just don't have the means to afford the tickets and accommodation, or indeed travel. We get a lot of inquiries about people wanting to come from, the US and South Africa and various places just because they've heard about it and want to be there. So people will spend a lot to come there, but we don't want just the people to be there who are the ones who can afford it. We do very much want those who will get the most out of it and to be able to contribute to it. So Perspectiva uses some of its core funds to provide bursary places. And that really means that if you can get your own tent, you can come just for travel costs. You just get there and basically everything's covered. The ticket cost is covered. You get your meals. And we've already provided some of them, but there's still quite a few places left for those who apply. And there is an application form. That's a kind of screening device. We do find some people just don't put any effort into explaining why they want to come, and then we're like, well, we'll give the bursary to someone else who's a bit clearer about it. So it does matter a bit, but mostly we're looking for varied composition, different backgrounds and perspectives as far as we can. So like I say, if not for yourself, think of particularly younger people, by which I mean, what exactly is young, right? But certainly people under 35 and ideally under 25, just to keep. I've invited a few people I know whom I think would like it, partly just to drive wider range of people, and that's what the bursaries are there for. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Jonathan. And there was one more question from Becky, which is, are we in different groups over the days or assigned to only one? So that'd be about the small groups. And no, you're assigned to one group, Becky. And that's really so that you can foster relationships with those people over the weekend. And when we say small groups, you only meet once a day. So it's not a huge commitment to this small group. And we have, if someone has any kind of particular reason that they need to switch groups, we do facilitate that. So we will look after you in those small groups. Absolutely. David Harrison says, embodied cognition is core to secular contemplative meditation. Is that also part of your schedule? Jonathan, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, I'm sure Mark could as well, but I think I would say it's not a formal part of our schedule, but I would say embodied cognition is very much implied in the entire design and experience of the festival. It is a festival for the soul, but the way you get to the soul, if you like, is partly through the senses and partly through embodiment. We begin with a celia, as Pippa mentioned, and that's also a statement. It's not just a fun activity, hopefully. It's also a way of saying, look, you have a body, there is merriment. This matters too. You don't have to begin with a keynote speech. It's not obligatory. We're not against keynote speeches. There'll be quite a few at the festival, but we want the full human being, and embodied cognition is one way of framing that. In terms of contemplation, I mean, I'd say there's quite a big spiritual vibe at the festival, but it's non-denominational. There's no particular doctrine going on, only that there's a certain openness to other ways of knowing at the festival that we certainly don't discourage, but nor is there any particular agenda in that respect.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, David, for your question. Anyone else got anything you want to add? Mark?
Pippa, I can see that John Wilson, who doesn't look like a John, but nonetheless, she wants to ask a question.
I don't know how to change it to Leslie.
Oh, Leslie, welcome, Leslie. Ask your question.
This all sounds really wonderful, but I'm just thinking accommodation and camping. Are we in a sort of site far away from the house? Are there, nice toilets? I haven't camped for a little while. We've got the gear, but how does that work out? And do we pay more to camp or?
A great question. I mean, Nick, do you want to speak particularly to your facilities?
Yeah. Well, if you've got the camping gear, that sounds great. It sounds like you're ready to get stuck in. But we've got sort of three different options in a way. So there are rooms. They're slightly limited and they're slightly more expensive than the other options, but there are some. Both in the house and there are accommodations next to the house, so on site. And then the next kind of rung on the ladder, so to speak, is some very nice yurts that have proper beds in them. There's access to showers, kind of a glamping setup, which are quite, are comfortable. And then the third option is people are invited to bring their own tents and their own camping and and do their own accommodation. So that's how it sort of works for accommodation.
And are the tents, if you bring your own tents, is that included in the cost, or do we pay more for that?
No, so you won't be charged. So if you bring your tent, then that's fine. You've sort of sorted out. You only charge for the event ticket. which covers you being at the event and all the food and yeah.
Okay. And if we wanted to stay in the house, which sounds nice, how expensive is that? Or have you not worked that out
No,
yet?
we have worked it out, but I'm not sure we have the.
Yeah, I think if you go onto the website,
Be on the website,
and it will be all listed there. Yeah, the different types of tickets, and hopefully it will be easy to follow.
Good, right. Thank you very much. I shall now mute and be John again.
Thank you. And then we have a question from Jacob about what happens in the evenings. So in the evenings, we have we just have a different sort of entertainment. So like we said, on the Thursday, we have the Kaylee. I can't remember off the top of my head what's happening on the Friday. Oh, Friday we have a fireside chat with Bettany Hughes, don't we? And then we have a big improvised band music session on the Saturday night that goes into actually a Batcave dance party where we have Nick's other skill is, Leslie's face is brilliant. Nick's other skill is that he's also a brilliant DJ. So there's lots of music and play, but also again, these things are, you can choose to go to them. We also have a fire pit, and you can just sit and have a chat by the fire. You could go to bed early if you want. You know, the choice is yours, but it's really, again, it's about coming together in the evenings and probably having really rich conversations about things that have happened during the day. That's usually when the best chats occur. Jonathan, I feel like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just to add, because in some ways the evenings are the best of it, I think. And yes, there's the Batcave and the dancing there, but there's also very often at dinner, there's a certain amount of complimentary wine, and then there's a bar that happens to be open nearby. I'm assuming we're still doing that. And basically, it's people often stay at their table for quite a long time. And then it's getting dark outside. People are already at the fire. But there's also a walk to the sauna, and there's a kind of sauna subculture as well. And there's a little kind of stream there. And two of the best nights of my life have been the last couple of festivals, just being with the moon around midnight and with the other festival revelers. I can't promise I'll do the same this year, but it really, there is a place to go. I mean, there are things to do in the evenings, and you will find other people who are just like you know, not necessarily there with anyone they know. But that's what helps create the kind of intimacy and ease of conversation, because you have in common the fact you've chosen to come to this place. Yeah. There's also this stargazing thing that I don't know if you're going to mention that, Mark, but there's maybe Nick, you can explain it, but there's a particularly beautiful way of looking at the stars.
There's what looks like a landed flying saucer, which is actually a seat that enables you to stare at the sky, have your neck supported, and enjoy the summer stars moving over your head. I want to pepper also just about saying something, particularly for those who have been before. The way the program's slightly different in that we've been thinking a lot about the space. You know, encounters, Jonathan just mentioned them again there, how important that is. But we are also having a sort of slightly new form in the program this year, which we're calling discoveries. And the idea is that they are more informal sessions you might go to and find by walking around the house and then the grounds and so on over the lunch periods. The lunch is a packed lunch, so you can take it and eat it wherever you want. And you might go and find Jonathan, who in another life was a grandmaster playing chess. You might discover someone doing some dance. You might find someone else talking about the soul in science. You might want to go and talk to our other co-creator, Ed, about being a maverick. So there's going to be these less formal chances to engage and meet with people and be out in the place too, very much be out in the place over the lunchtime, as well as the talks with Q&As that you'll be familiar with, the workshops, and then also the small groups, of course, which we've mentioned, woven in with music and all sorts of other things.
And Yeah, I think that it's a really difficult balance for us because we every year, in fact, I have to say, we've started with, we're going to just make sure there's enough space for people to have some time to themselves, and then we get excited. There's so many things we want to put in the timetable. So what we've woven this time is that there's a lot of choice, and one of the choices is always to participate with the space rather than with necessarily a talk or a workshop. So always thinking that the place itself, and it's hard to really explain the place until you've been there, how beautiful it is and what an instant sort of effect it does have on you, on your soul, I would say, is probably the best way to describe it. And that you might actually need and wish to spend half the time that you're there just wandering the grounds and being with nature. And that is absolutely one way to enjoy the festival. We are almost coming to the end of our time, and so if there's any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But it seems like perhaps the questions have come to an end. I would just like to add really that yeah, again, we've done these Zoom chats every year, and every year when we talk about it, I feel more and more excited about what we've created. But also I'm really struck by how hard it is to describe what we're trying to do, and that this really is an event that you kind of can't understand until you've been in it, and that once you have been through it and in it, you can get a sense of what it is. And that is kind of the worst thing for us in terms of publicizing it, because we almost can't articulate with words what it is entirely. We can only give you snapshots of what we hope it will be, but so much of it is what it is because of the people that come. So I hope we've given you enough of a snapshot that's made you want to come and participate and be a part of it. There's so many different ways of coming, from the bursaries to up into staying in the house, to camping on your own, to coming in a glamping way. You're welcome if you're coming by yourself. You're really well looked after. So coming solo is it's really a great festival solo, actually. There's no worries there. And of course, people come in couples or friends, little groups of friends. So you're really welcome, whichever shape you arrive in. I think that's pretty much all we have to say, other than you'll find more information on the realisationfestival.com. I'm just looking to my colleagues, my buddies, to see if there's anything else anyone wants to add.
Leslie waving her hand.
Oh, Leslie, I'm sorry, darling.
I'm just wondering, is it possible for people to watch this recording? Because
Yes.
John's not able to be here tonight, and I've got a friend who might be interested. So can we get it again?
Absolutely. That's exactly why we're recording it. We'll get put up somewhere and we will send you the link. I'll make sure you get it, Leslie.
We're planning to sell it to Netflix, actually.
Yeah.
I just want to add one thing, just in case any of you are wondering. The only thing I feel has been missing, we've described a lot of the kind of how and a little bit of the background, but the one thing to say about the small groups is that this year there's also a kind of thematic, to sort of the holding pattern for the festival. It's in the word realization that we have mean three things by this. I don't know if this came up at the beginning, but basically we're interested in getting real, becoming real, and making real. And the conversation sort of, this is a loose structure that allows us to have something in common, but also give us a lot of freedom for our own kind of conversational adventures. But getting real is roughly getting the world in perspective, what's going on, the reckoning. Becoming real is more about your own kind of personal journey and sort of individuation and who you are and what's happening for you. And then making real is like, and now what follows? What are you going to do differently as a result? And so these questions will be quite alive in the small group sessions, and they'll permeate the whole event as a kind of shared inquiry. And that's part of what gives it its intellectual texture, as well as all the creative, aesthetic, and emotional material.
Thanks, Jonathan. That's brilliant. We've just had one last question from Cam Bellamy about, is there anything we should do to prepare for the gathering? Reading, inner prep? I don't know. I personally, my sort of instinct is to say, prepare however you feel you might need to prepare. You know, if you want to do some reading, if you're the sort of person who likes to see who's speaking and sort of look them all up and know stuff about them, then then that's one way to prepare. But really, I would suggest just prepare to take part, prepare to participate, prepare to come along and bring something of yourself. Yeah, this is not a festival to be consumed, but rather to participate in.
Also, do have a look at the blog page on the website. There's little bits to read there, so that might be something just to help get more of a sense of things, but also start sparking your own thoughts, precisely as Pippa was saying there, to participate with things.
Yes. Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Just
Good.
having a last check that no one's got a secret hand up for a question. No. All right. Lovely. So thank you so much for coming along, and we really hope that we'll see you in June.